Viewers, welcome back, and we will start the second question from a point that was very interesting that was raised by Aghaji in his first response. Sir, this is regarding the land reforms, and given a chance that today is 15th August 1947, what roadmap would you draw for Pakistan government to follow?
Your ideology is your strength, and that is where lie all your solutions. There are three basic things which are required. Number one, if you are a nation state, you need to consolidate your population, you need to consolidate your land, you need to consolidate the method of governance. When you address that, today the land in Pakistan has over 100, and I am not quoting an exact figure, I am making a statement which is conversely 100 or 100 plus varieties of owning land. Everybody seems to be a land distributor, everybody seems to be able to give land out. So your land is not consolidated. Your population, again, is fragmented into provincialism, is fragmented into a variety of other divisions which cause disparity within the state. That means for everything that the state is required to provide to a citizen is not evenly handed. Then comes the laws. You have a constitution in place which is like an umbrella protecting the statutes. These statutes, which we are following predominantly, have been engineered on a law-making philosophy of the colonists.
Sir, coming back, that's a very, long statement that, as far as I'm concerned, subject-wise. Coming back to land reforms, for example, sir, let's start from that, sir. You were author of a document for the government of Pakistan. What were the salient features in that? How did you plan to bring the land which is not underutilization but owned by these big landlords, these Lagaris and Mazaris and so many other families?
You see, the template which I provided to the government, and I have consistently done that over the years to various governments, has been simple. Fiscal decentralization can address land reforms. You see, you have 3,403 population areas in the country. I had proposed, and I still stand by that proposition, that they should be converted into municipal companies and get quoted on our stock exchanges, so that vertical development of these population areas on the highest standards possible should be done.
Any example in the world, sir?
Many. The county system in Switzerland, the management of municipal counties in Britain. You can take the American example, where each city has got its own fiscal management, which is aided by the state or the federation or a variety of major institutions.
Are political parties and political system averse to this? Or for that matter, even these military rules?
They have to be averse to this. You see, it goes against the grain of they being able to manage constituencies. It is in their interest to not go for fiscal decentralization, because if they go for fiscal decentralization, you will not find prime ministers and presidents handing out land to the population. It is very peculiar that we see as a servant of the people obliging the employer. You can have some land, you can have so much of money, and you can do this. This is rubbish. The personality-based politics in Pakistan is a cancer. It needs to be put to an end. The sooner, the better.
So many countries in our neighborhood like us, India for example, their land reforms, when they were implemented in 1950, reduced the land holdings.
It is not in the reduction of land holding. It is
something that you can manage, maybe.
It is in the utilization. I had proposed that while you do municipal companies, the rest of the land in the country should be given out for agriculture, should be given out for industries under proper regulatory regimes. You see, if you take the world food map, for instance, you will see small countries in Europe as exporters of food and big countries like Pakistan with a lot of agricultural land as importers of food. Where is the difference? The difference is that our land is getting fragmented. It is not being managed correctly. There are no resources to manage the land. So if you allow corporate farming, it takes care of it. If my father left a plot of land, and if I were 12 brothers or 12 sisters, upon his death, this land would have
Been further fragmented.
Each one of us would not have the resources to develop it. So there would be so much less land under the plow. Now, if he was a shareholder in a corporate, in an agricultural corporate, then upon his demise, all we would have received would be shares. The land would have remained intact, the productivity from it would have remained intact. This again is not being allowed because the current landowners, and some of them freehold landowners, are neither paying taxes nor putting land under the plow.
You had also suggested some kind of taxation on the land that is not being utilized.
You see, in my understanding and my research, consequent upon my study of the philosophy of lawmaking in Islam, there is no such thing as income tax, there is no such thing as other taxes and other forms of taxes which we have managed to copy from the British Raj. They are irrelevant, they are a deterrent to production, they are a deterrent to the freedom of enterprise. There is only one form of tax on the basis of which governments are supposed to be funded. That comes from land. If I use land, I must pay for it. Whether it is industrial, whether it is agricultural, whether it is commercial and urban. It makes no difference. So unless you are going to, what we call in Islam, masawat, unless you're going to have an even-handed policy for land management, for opportunity, for education, for health, for industrialization, for agricultural management, nothing will happen.
Will I be wrong in saying that the concept you are suggesting is implemented selectively by all Muslim countries, you know? In totality, it does not exist anywhere. Or in your knowledge?
There is no such thing as a Muslim country in my view right now. We are following some sort of pattern which has allowed some sort of a political force to be in office. In Pakistan, they call it democracy. In other countries, it's called monarchy. In some countries, it is called
Khilafat or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, that is all it's in the visage of something ideal, but it is in total denial of the basic requirement of government in Islam, which is equity.
In fact, sir, we will talk about other aspects also. Now you've touched a very, very interesting point of ideology in respect to Pakistan. And my next question to you after the break would be that who, in your opinion, the government, the political parties, or the bureaucrats, for example, in our case, even the army is a stakeholder in government making.
This is a bad word, though, stakeholder.
Yes.
The entire nation are stakeholders.
Yes. So, who do you think should have implemented, keeping in mind 1947 situation, when for the following 8 to 9 years, we were confronted with a massive influx of these immigrants coming from India. Sir, we will now go for a short break. Viewers, please stay with us, and we will ask Aghaji the same question, because ideology is the most misinterpreted word in case of Pakistan. How does it link? Does it mean rule of clergy only mean the ideology or something else? So please stay with us. We'll be back soon.